If you have ever experienced having a kidney stone, chances are you hope to never experience it again. But sadly for a lot of people, it can be a bit of a chronic or at least worrisome condition. So we're happy this morning to welcome Dr. Mark Currin. He is a urologist with CHI Memorial's Chattanooga Urology Associates. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
And first crack out of the gate, what you were just educating me on is that there really are two different types of kidney stones, and people can have them and not know that they have an issue at the moment.
Sure, so there's all sorts of different types of kidney stones, but what you're referring to is the location of a stone, which really determines whether or not a stone is causing you any symptoms. So you can have a stone that's either obstructing or blocking the flow of urine out of the kidney, or one that's not obstructing the flow of urine out of the kidney.
Okay.
So it's either one or the other. The ones that block the flow of urine out are the ones that cause the terrible pain that people have come to know about stones. If you have a stone in the kidney that's not necessarily blocking the flow of urine out of that kidney, then that stone should not be causing you any discomfort.
Okay, let's go to first grade for a minute. What exactly is a kidney stone?
So a kidney stone is basically, it's the same concept as a stone that you would find out in the parking lot. It's a compound of two things that come together to basically make a crystal which grows over time. Okay. And the most common type of stones that people make are calcium oxalate stones. Okay. So there are a lot of different things that people can do to reduce their risk of making stones. Now there are several other different types of stones outside of the calcium oxalate stones, but that's certainly the most common type that people make.
I will confess I've never had a problem with this before, but I have a friend whose husband has, and I understand it's quite painful. So I imagine if you've ever gone through it before, you don't want to experience it again. Right. Some people are just genetically predisposed to it, but you said that they can reduce the amount of oxalate-rich foods they eat, and that can help?
Sure. So as far as I'm concerned, from a urological perspective, there's two types of people in the world when it comes to stones. There are people who are stone formers and people who are not stone formers. Okay. And you can just hope to get cast the right lot in life to hope that you're not a stone former. But for those people who are high-risk stone formers, we can actually do a metabolic workup, a combination of blood work and some urine studies to essentially try to figure out what it is about the way that their kidneys make urine that makes them prone to making stones. And after that metabolic workup, generally we can target a couple things that we can change by either starting medications or changing lifestyle habits, dietary habits, things like that to help reduce their risk of making stone.
Okay, a couple of questions. One, if you are a stone maker, if that's your genetic makeup, it does not necessarily mean that you are at other risks of kidney disease. Doesn't rule it out either, but it doesn't guarantee that that's going to be a problem.
Sure, that's a good point. So people who are high-risk stone formers may go on their whole life and never have any long-term kidney damage or something like that predisposes them to having to go onto dialysis or something like that. Okay. You can have people who have a normal overall kidney function throughout their life, but their kidneys can still make stones. So when it comes down to it, for any person who asks me, hey, what can I do to reduce my risk of making stones, I say there's four things that any one person can do, whether they're a high-risk stone former or not. And it's I tell people to do more of two things and then less of two things. Okay. The more of two things are the number one risk factor for making stones is dehydration. So the number one thing that people can do is just drink more fluid. Okay. Water is always best, but more fluid is better. For high-risk stone formers, we're generally recommending that people drink at least 2.5 liters of fluid a day.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. But dehydration is the number one risk factor for making stones. So more fluid. The second is more citrate in your diet. Citrate is a compound that's found in citrus fruits, lemons, limes, oranges, things like that. The easiest way to increase citrate in your diet, I sort of say you can knock out two birds with one stone. Just keep a sack full of limes or lemons in your house, and every time you fill up that 1 liter water bottle you got,
put it in there.
Take a half a lemon or a half a lime, squeeze the juice in there, and drop the rest of it down in there. Okay. And enjoy your water like that.
So far, pretty easy.
So far, pretty easy. Those are the two easy ones. The two hard ones are less of two things, and it's less sodium in your diet. And when I say that, I mean it's basically salt. So people's mind goes straight to the salt shaker, and that's generally not the number one culprit. It's the sodium that's in the foods that you're already buying. So whoever's buying the groceries at home, if you're comparing two different brands of the same product, Pay attention to the nutrition facts on the back and try to get the one that has less sodium in it.
Is there a daily amount of sodium intake that we ought to have? Because if you haven't been a label reader, it can be intimidating, because if you look at anything, a can of peas would have, what, 140 milligrams of sodium or something like that, a lot.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a lot of sodium that's put into a lot of the already processed foods that we're buying. So that most of the nutritional information on daily allotments of compounds like sodium is on the back of those nutrition labels. So you can actually find it there or on the internet, and just find sort of nutritional guides as far as what's allotted, and try to keep it on the lower end of a normal range.
Okay.
So less sodium, and then the last one is less animal protein in your diet. Now, I would never tell someone to cut, that's generally all meats, and that includes fish as well. I would never tell someone to cut that out of their diet entirely, because I think that would be robbing you of one of the great joys in life. But generally, the way I tell people to approach this is consider, if you have 3 meals a day, 7 days a week, consider how many of those meals you actually have some sort of meat. And then just start by choosing 3 meals a week, breakfast on Monday, lunch on Tuesday, lunch on Thursday, and just cut meat out of that meal entirely.
Well, that's easy to do.
It's easy to do, and then if you find that you have no problem doing that, try to bump it up to 5 meals a week and see how you do with that.
Okay, if you are someone who is a stone maker and you do the metabolic workup, and let's say you're a parent, is it possible that your kids could also become stone makers, and would their metabolic workup possibly show something different than your own?
Certainly, yeah, that's a great question. So if you have a family history of making stones, and you are 48 years old and you've already passed stones 3 times and maybe had to go and have surgery for a stone once, then you certainly meet criteria to be considered a high-risk stone former. For high-risk stone formers, we generally recommend doing a metabolic workup to see what it is about the way your kidneys work that makes you predisposed to making stones. And generally, it focuses on 7 or 8 things that we actually can try to change to help reduce your risk of making stones again.
Okay.
Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that your children will be high-risk stone formers. So it's not, we don't do it as a screening measure for younger people who haven't had problems with stones yet.
Okay.
So, my general rule of thumb is everybody gets 1. If you make 1 stone, depending on your age, I mean, if you're 19 years old and you may have made a stone and passed a stone, then you're probably going to end up being a high-risk stone former. But
okay.
I say everybody gets 1, but once you start having problems with more than 1, then we can do the metabolic workup.
All right, you have to love a doctor who will help you ease into improving your health. Dr. Mark Currin, he's back home from Chattanooga, born and bred, now happily back home where he belongs. You'll find him on the North Campus at CHI Memorial's Chattanooga Urology Associates up in Hickson. The phone number 541-1125 on Hamill Road. Thank you both. Thank you so much.
Thanks again for having me.